Part 4. The Interview Illusion. For a long time, interviews have been the safety net. Even if a CV was inflated, even if someone had been coached to death for an assessment, we believed the interview would sort it out. A live conversation, a human interaction, seeing a candidate think on their feet. But that's no longer the case. Not because interviews have suddenly become useless, but because the conditions they rely on have changed. There are now tools that can listen to an interview question, generate a response in real time, and display it on screen while the candidate speaks. Some methods are obvious, some are not. And this is already happening in real hiring processes. Recruiters and hiring managers are seeing it now. There are also cases of proxy interviewing, where one person interviews and another starts the job, and examples of deep fake audio or video in remote interviews. But here's the important point. The main issue isn't fraud, it's confidence in the process. If you can't be sure what an interview is measuring, you cannot rely on it as evidence of candidate capability. And most current interview designs were not built for this level of uncertainty. Think about how many interviews still rely on static behavioural questions. Tell me about a time when, or how do you handle conflict, or what would you do if? Those questions assume two things. First, that the person answering is recalling and reasoning in the moment, and second, that fluency is a reasonable proxy for understanding. Neither assumption is safe anymore, though. A fluent answer can now be assisted, or rehearsed, or even generated. The structure of many interview questions makes this possible. These questions often reward confidence and coherence rather than depth, and often are predictable. A common response from employers then is to try and detect this behaviour in candidates through AI detection, or watching eye movements, or analysing speech patterns, looking for tells that a candidate is using AI. But that approach isn't effective. They also introduce new risks, especially for neurodivergent candidates, non-native speakers, and those with different communication styles who might be flagged with a false negative. More importantly, detection does not address the main issue. The purpose of an interview is not to prove that a candidate did not receive help. It's to assess whether they can do the job. So talent acquisition leaders should focus on what type of interview still produces useful evidence in an environment where AI is available to candidates. And the answer isn't more training for interviewers. It's through better design. Interviews that use static questions and focus on storytelling are most at risk. Interviews that require real-time reasoning are less vulnerable. This requires changing how interviews are conducted. So, for example, some of the methods we are using, interviewers can interrupt answers deliberately and politely and ask follow-up questions based on the candidate's previous responses. Interviewers can introduce constraints or change the scenario during an interview, or add new information and ask the candidate to adapt. Or you can ask candidates to think out loud to show how they approach problems with incomplete or unclear information. And it's even more effective to base interviews on live work. So some examples. Provide a short document for the candidate to review and critique. Walk through a decision they would make in the role using imperfect data and limited time. Now, these exercises don't need to be complex, but they should reflect real work. What you're aiming to do is to generate evidence during the interview that is difficult to cheat, but straightforward to observe. And this doesn't mean banning AI entirely. In many roles, effective AI is part of the job. Ignoring this only excludes candidates who are transparent about their methods. But there is a difference between preparation and substitution. If you want to allow candidates to use AI for preparation, be explicit about it. If you want to prohibit real-time assistance during live interviews, say so clearly. Avoid ambiguity. If AI literacy is important for the role, then assess it directly. Give candidates a task where they can use AI. Ask them to explain their approach. Ask what they changed from the AI's output and what they chose not to use. This approach provides more insight than a polished interview answer. If interviews are designed to reward fluency, then that is what they will measure. If interviews are designed to assess reasoning, they will reveal reasoning skills. But many organisations still rely on interviews to address issues from earlier on in the hiring process, and that's no longer effective. Interviews shouldn't just provide reassurance, they should provide evidence. In the next video, I'll discuss identity and fraud and how hiring is now intersecting with security and risk in new ways for HR.